Boker Tov, good morning, dear friends, right here in Nachlaot and Rechavia in Yerushalayim, and of course abroad, whoever's going to be watching this class. We continue now what we've started earlier, the course for in Tehillim, Psalm, Perek Kuf Yutet, chapter 119, and we're in the middle of the letter Hey. In the middle of verse Lamed Hey, we'll read the pasuk again. Yesterday we learned some of the interpretations into this pasuk, and now we will continue. I should just mention, if anybody wants to sponsor these classes in honor or in memory of someone, it's a great opportunity. Please let me know, and it will be a great zechut, a great honor. So David HaMelech says in Perek Kuf Yutet, pasuk Lamed Hey, verse number 35, Hadricheni b'ntiv mitzvotecha. Lead me, guide me in the path of your commandments. Kivo chafatzti. For that is my desire. Okay. So, one beautiful interpretation is over here as follows. That some people tend to daven and learn Torah. It's called mitzvot anashim melumada. The mitzvah of people as they've learned it. There are some people which it's a great zechut to be able to observe mitzvahs from when you're a child and you grow into it, you grow with the Torah. As opposed to someone who is a Baal Tshuva later on in life and is introduced to Torah and mitzvot, their excitement in the mitzvahs are usually much more. So it's wonderful to start doing mitzvahs from when you're born, but someone that does, it needs to find different ways to bring inspiration and excitement into the observance of the mitzvahs that they do. Or let's say the davening, every day the same davening. So for example, now we're learning the Tehillim. Hopefully this will bring, for all of us, more excitement, more meaning into our saying of Tehillim. So the more we learn Chassidut in the davening, for example, hopefully we'll be able to have more excitement and more focus on the meaning of the words, the interpretation of the words of the davening. So therefore, David HaMelech says as follows: Hadricheni, guide me, even if by other people it's the observance of the mitzvahs and the davening every day is mitzvot anashim melumada, is sort of boring because they're doing every day the same stuff, or the mitzvahs that are done has been done many times prior. Hadricheni, he says to Hashem, please guide me, give me inspiration, teach me how to infuse the observance of my Torah and mitzvot, that it should be more exciting. Now we can move on to verse number Lamed Vav 36. David HaMelech, King David, says to Hashem, Hatli bi el eidvotecha. Turn my heart to your testimonies. Ve'al el batza, and not to greed. Naturally, Hashem created a human being that we want the temptations of the world. We want to have usually batza. I believe it's Rashi that quotes over here. One of the commentators, one second please. It's one of the other commentators that says, here it is. It's, just one moment. The Mitzudat Zion. Batza ahavat hamamon. Loving money. That's how Hashem made us. Mishi yeshlo maneh rotza matayim. Our sages teach us someone has $100, they want to have $200. Mishi yeshlo matayim rotza dalad meot. If someone has 200, he wants 400. That's the way Hashem made us. hopefully we use the money that we have for spreading godliness in the world. But naturally, we want to have more money and more money. That's just the way Hashem created us. So therefore, David the Melech says, "Hatli b'ledvotecha." Turn my heart not to want money, rather to want your mitzvot. In other words, that my heart should be a little more or much more connected and turned towards you, rather than towards materiality of the world, materialism of the world. So, for example, if a person has a business, it's wonderful to make a lot of money. But the question is, where is a person's focus? Is a person's focus on the business or on Hashem? There are a couple of differences. One difference is, if a person is focused on Hashem, so someone comes into your store, or you're talking to someone online, you'll throw in a nice anecdote that you learned this morning, or that you learned in the recent past. Because you're sharing Hashem's knowledge. You're publicizing godliness in the world. But if a person is only focused on the business, on the money, they will not necessarily share an anecdote of Torah that they've learned. Another difference between the two is, if a person is focused on Hashem, hat libi leidvotecha, turn my heart to your testimonies, to your mitzvot, then a person, when you have an opportunity, you'll try to learn. Either cut the hours of the business, or when you have a chance and there's no customers, you'll take out a sefer and say a chapter of Tehillim, or learn the Chumash of the day, or the Tanya of the day, or the Rambam of the day. Or you go to JerusalemChabad.org, and you go to adult education, and then you click on daily study, and then you'll see many different options, including Daf Hayomi, that you can learn for that day. And you can sneak that in middle of doing your business. I'm not talking about if you're an employee. I'm talking about if you're an employer. Then you have the luxury of being flexible. But if you're an employee, you need to be 100% focused on your business. That's another way of bringing Hashem into your life, into the mundane things that we do. Doing things honestly, that's the way of Hashem. Another option is, if a person chooses to use the money that they've earned for tzedakah, for ma'asim tovim, for good acts, that's another way of showing that hat libi eledvotecha, turn my heart to your mitzvot. V'al el batza, don't make the money the focus. It's okay to make money, and it's great to make a lot of money. Just our heart should be in the right place. Our heart should be focused on the mitzvahs and the Torah, as I explained earlier, the different ways how you can make your mundane things that you do during the day, and to focus your heart to Hashem, to focus your heart to the Torah and the observance of mitzvot. Okay. So we started learning Lamed Vav, and we said, Pasuk 36, turn my heart to your testimonies and not to greed. Now, let's learn another interpretation into this special verse. And it goes as follows. Although there are different types of rewards for the mitzvahs that we do, including materialistic reward, the Torah tells us in Parashat Bechukotai, and the Rambam explains that these rewards are in the Gashmiyut, in the material realm. Because Hashem wants us to keep on learning Torah and doing mitzvot. So he has to give us an abundance of materialism. So we shouldn't be sidetracked, and we shouldn't be overwhelmed by what the world demands from us. Day-to-day dealings. There are also spiritual rewards. Hashem gives us the spiritual siyata deshmaya, help from above, in order that we should be able to benefit and learn more Torah. Of course, after 120, after 180, and when Mashiach comes hopefully today, then we're going to be able to have much more spiritual rewards for the mitzvahs that we've done down here. So what is David HaMelech saying? He says as follows. Hat libi el edvotecha. Incline my heart to your mitzvot. The alal batza. Over here, how does the Alshich explain the batza, the greed? The reward that we're going to get. Usually a person will say, oh, I'm going to get a reward. It's an incentive to do more. But David HaMelech is saying, according to this interpretation, please, Hashem, I don't want to observe your mitzvot for the reward. I want to, for the batza, for the quote-unquote greed that I'm going to get from it afterwards. Hashem, I want to observe your mitzvot for the sake of doing your mitzvot. Period. End of conversation. That should be the only motive of my heart. Why doing the mitzvot? For the mitzvot itself. Even though a spiritual reward, one can argue and say, what do you mean? You're going to get a spiritual reward. Why shouldn't you do the mitzvah for a spiritual reward? Maybe that's a good idea. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. But David HaMelech wanted one step ahead. David HaMelech wanted the zechut to be able to observe the mitzvot without anything in return. Just for the fact of doing the mitzvah itself. That itself is the greatest reward. As it says in Pirkei Avot, schar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward of one mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Usually we would say, what do you mean? You can't have the thing itself, and that itself is the reward. Yes. When we do a mitzvah, that itself, mitzvah connects. When we do the commandment, then that connects us to Hashem. Is there a greater reward than being connected to Hashem? It's a very deep level, because usually as human beings, we want to receive something in return for the effort that we make. But the level of a tzaddik is to observe a mitzvah for the sake of the mitzvah itself. That's like the Alter Rebbe said, quoting the pasuk in Tehillim in chapter 73, Ayin Gimel. David HaMelech says, Mili bashamayim, who do I have in the heaven? Besides for Hashem. Ve'imcha lo chafatzti ba'aretz, and with you, in other words, aside from you, I don't want anything else in the land. Kala she'eri ulevavi, my heart and everything that I have goes out to you. What was he saying? According to the Alter Rebbe interpreted this similar point. David HaMelech said, besides for you, I don't even have the shamayim. I don't want the aretz, the earth. I don't want the shamayim. I don't want anything spiritual, let alone material. I just want you. Just you yourself. When I observe the mitzvahs, I just want you. There's an interesting story of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm actually going to start from the end to bring the point across, and then I'll come back and I'll connect the dots. So the Baal Shem Tov and his Rebbetzin had a girl at home, and she would help out. She was unfortunately orphaned, and she would help out in the home, and they paid her for the work that she did. Unfortunately, once the helper, the Jewish girl, she had lice in her hair. I'm just telling you the story. and the Baal Shem Tov's wife was cleaning her hair, and because of the knots and the lice in her hair, the girl screamed from pain because it hurt. There wasn't intention that it wasn't intentional that she was hurt, but the fact is that she was hurt. And so, at one point, she was screaming so much that the Baal Shem Tov's wife gave her a smack or a tap on the face. I don't know exactly what it was, and the Baal Shem Tov, in other words, that she should stop screaming. And the Baal Shem Tov was nearby, and he did not say anything. He did not object. He did not tell his wife that she should not be doing that, especially for the girl as an orphan. And at that moment, it was decreed in heaven that the Baal Shem Tov should lose his Olam Haba, his portion of the world to come. For a tzaddik, even not to object, not to say something, is considered a blemish. And he deserved a punishment, that he was going to lose his spiritual reward in the world to come. At that moment, the Baal Shem Tov expressed happiness. Obviously, it's not a good thing to lose a portion in the world to come. However, the Baal Shem Tov said, now my observance of mitzvot, here's the punchline, is just for the observance of the mitzvot, without any reward. It's almost as if to say, like the Alter Rebbe said, we said a few minutes ago, I don't want your material reward. I don't want your spiritual reward. Just you yourself. When I do the mitzvah, I connect to you, Hashem. It's a very, very deep concept. Just to complete the story, I want to mention that the story is a very, very interesting story where happened later on. There are many stories of the Baal Shem Tov on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, that after Shabbat, he would gather some of his students, and they would go into the wagon, and the Baal Shem Tov would travel with the Alexei, the Gentile wagon driver. He would drive the horses, and when they came to the end of the town, almost all the stories start in this way, and they came to the end of the town, and Alexei would turn around, and miraculously the horses would travel at fast speeds, very, very, very long, very far, very far distances. And the Baal Shem Tov would do all kinds of spiritual stuff with his Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration. Sometimes very quickly, and sometimes it took several days. So in this particular story, the Baal Shem Tov is traveling with his students, and going quickly in the forest, and the Baal Shem Tov lost his Ruach HaKodesh, his divine inspiration. And Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, they're traveling, and the Baal Shem, the students asked him, where are we going? And he said, I don't know. I lost my Ruach HaKodesh. They finally come on Friday afternoon. They see a light in the forest, and they knock on the door, no idea who's there. It turns out there's a Jewish guy living there, a very, very heavy-set person. And one of the students goes in and says, the Baal Shem Tov, can we stay here for Shabbos? And so he said, who are you? The Baal Shem Tov, the holy Rebbe. Maybe he didn't know who the Baal Shem Tov was. He said, who are you? From the Chassidim? And so the story has many, many details, how he said, you can't do your Chassidic stuff here. And he did the mitzvahs very, very, davened extremely quickly. He did the bare minimum, didn't have proper challah, had black bread. He was observant, but he wasn't exactly interested in the Hasidic way of life. He wouldn't let the Baal Shem Tov go to the mikveh before Shabbos, which is a very special custom, and so on and so forth. And Friday night, he screamed at the Baal Shem Tov, and it was very, very for the Baal Shem Tov to be able to experience such a Shabbos where they couldn't have the songs, the special nigunim, and the divrei Torah was a very great pain for him. He didn't let them sleep the entire Friday night. Shabbos also, he made them crazy. And finally, after Shabbos, the Baal Shem Tov said, "Let's go. Let's move on." No. He stood by the door. They couldn't get to the door because he was so large, and he made them crazy the whole night. Sunday, Monday, finally Tuesday, he said, "You can go." And they packaged, they packed their stuff up, and they got into the wagon. And as they're about to pull away, there's a beautiful young woman that walks up to the wagon, and she says, "Rebbe, do you recognize me?" So the Baal Shem Tov said, "First of all, how do you know that I'm a Rebbe? And second of all, if you knew I was a Rebbe, how did you allow me to spend the past 3-4 days with so much trouble and going through such pain?" So she said, "Rebbe, let me remind you who I am. I am the young girl who used to work in your home. And I ended up marrying this individual who you spent the Shabbos with. And he is a tzaddik, a hidden tzaddik, one of the 36 Lamed Vav tzaddikim. And at that moment, when the Rebbetzin hit me, and the Rebbe was around, the Rebbe knew what had happened, the Rebbe lost his Olam Haba. And later on, when I ended up moving away and marrying this special tzaddik, we decided that we want the Rebbe to have Olam Haba once again." And it says in the Talmud that Shabbat is me'ein Olam Haba. The pleasure of Shabbat is similar to the pleasure of the world to come when the neshama ascends on high, and when Mashiach comes, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of spirituality in the world. So we decided that we're going to bring about that you will lose one Shabbat, so to speak. You will lose the pleasure, the elation of davening and divrei Torah and the singing. You'll have the bare minimum, but you won't be able to have the pleasure that you usually have, like the holy Baal Shem Tov used to have all the time. And now that you have lost your portion of the world to come, now that you have regained your portion of the world to come, my husband and I invite you, the Rebbe, to please stay here together with your students and to spend another Shabbos here with us. And this time, the Shabbos that the Baal Shem Tov spent with this special couple was a very, very exalted, very, very holy Shabbos, a very spiritually inspiring Shabbos. And they davened together, and they sang together, they had wonderful food, and they were able to re-celebrate once again, to celebrate the Shabbos as the Baal Shem Tov knew it to be. And so that's the other part of the story, but I just wanted to point out the first part of the story, where the Baal Shem Tov had lost his Olam Haba, and he was happy about it. In other words, it's not a good thing to lose your Olam Haba. It would have been better, but at least there's one point of serving Hashem for the sake of serving Hashem, without any other ulterior motives involved. Okay, just to mention one more point for the class today, and then we'll continue Bezrat Hashem tomorrow. Okay, so we have as follows. This is a very interesting interpretation from the Lamed Vav. Just trying to juggle a lot, Baruch Hashem. There are many wonderful sources for our course. And the Malbim says as follows. He says that Eidot, we've said earlier in one of the earlier verses in Kuf Yutet, that Eidot refer to the stories of the Torah, which Eidot is like an aid, like a testimony, like a witness. So the stories of the Torah they testify that Hashem created the world yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, ex nihilo, and that Hashem gives good reward to the tzaddikim. So David HaMelech is asking Hashem, Hat libi el edvotecha, turn my heart towards, incline my heart towards your mitzvot, towards your eidotecha, towards the stories of your Torah. In other words, when I will be happy with the stories that you, Hashem, Hashem created the world, and your tzaddikim, which tells me about the divine inspiration and the kindness that Hashem does to the world, then I will observe your mitzvahs b'simcha, with joy, because you have commanded that I should do that. In other words, the stories of the Torah, as we've learned last week in a very detailed way, the stories of the Torah are very inspiring for us. And so David HaMelech wants specifically that Hashem should turn his heart towards the stories of the Torah. Thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem. And then, of course, Friday, we have Kabbalah Cafe. Looking forward to seeing you, Bezrat Hashem, every day. Be well. Shalom, shalom.